So, a pretty wild story unfolded in my life. It's almost like a movie plot, though not particularly hilarious. More of a thrilling drama with a medical twist. Here's how it went down. I've always adored my wife. Sure, I may not have showered her with flowers and gifts all the time, but I never disrespected her and brought home a decent paycheck. I pitched in around the house. We enjoyed trips to the movies and cafes and spent weekends strolling together. In a nutshell, our life seemed pretty normal, even blissful, and everything felt just right. But then I noticed something strange. She started getting worn out way too easily, sleeping up to 12 hours a day, and resisted any attempts to coax her outside for a walk, or even just to leave the house. Just a while back, she was the one who would remind me when it was time to get out, but I thought, maybe we'll soon be expecting a little one. It's common for women to feel sluggish in early pregnancy, right? So, I asked her, "What's going on? Are you feeling unwell?" I jokingly suggested she might be taking an extended vacation, maternity leave and all that. "No," she replied, "I'm not pregnant." "Okay, then maybe you're under the weather. Do you need some medicine or vitamins?" But again, it was a no. At work, she kept saying, "I'm just tired. I want to sleep. Leave me alone." That's when I started to get genuinely worried. My wife has always been affectionate and sweet. She's never been rude. Plus, she was usually full of energy, the kind of person who would insist we step out of the house at least every 3 days. Eventually, I managed to convince her to see a doctor. At the clinic, the doctor was stumped, shrugging her shoulders in confusion. They ran some tests and sent us home. Once my wife got her test results back, things took a bizarre turn. I received a call from the infectious diseases unit saying they needed to admit her for observation. Nothing made sense. I kept asking questions, but the doctor could only say they were uncertain about what was wrong. It seemed like some kind of infection. And now my wife was in the hospital. A week passed, then another, and still no answers about my wife's condition. One morning the hospital called, asking me to come in. Anxiety bubbled up. Was my wife okay? But on the phone they said, "Just come in. We'll explain everything when you arrive." When I arrived there, the doctor invited me to his office and outlined the situation. "Your wife has been diagnosed with a very rare infectious disease that is not common in our area. The name escapes me. It's complicated and strange, but it's usually called sleeping sickness. This disease causes constant fatigue, irritability, and, if left untreated, can be fatal." He stressed that this disease is usually suffered from in African countries. What's the catch? My wife and I have never travelled outside our vacation spot. The doctor suggested I reach out to friends, colleagues, or anyone who might have travelled abroad recently. But as I dug deeper, I realized he hadn't disclosed everything. You can actually contract this disease from someone who's been to an affected area, even if you haven't travelled there yourself. Suddenly it hit me. Our neighbour from the 5th floor, an IT technician, had just returned from a trip to Angola. My wife had even mentioned it in passing, marvelling at the unusual vacation choices people make. This came up after he had come to fix his laptop, which had been overheating. So I did some sleuthing and shared my suspicions with the doctors. They promptly brought the neighbour in for testing, and they also took samples from me. Thankfully, my results were clear. As for my wife's treatment, let's just say it was brutal, something you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. The doctors prescribed a series of injections that felt like they belonged in a medical encyclopedia. While she was hospitalized, I took care of my own business, filed for divorce, and started packing her things. After all, the apartment was mine before we got married. As for that guy, he rented an apartment in our building, so he wasted no time moving out of the line of fire. The moment my wife was discharged, she came at me, tears streaming down her face. "Please forgive me. It was a moment of weakness. You've been gone for a week, and I missed you," she sobbed. He fixed the laptop, and we started talking. We had a couple of glasses of wine. "And now it's perfectly fine to do this with every repairman," I shot back, fuming. "You know it's your fault, right? I invited you to come with me, and you chose to go off alone." "That was a work trip. We were saving up to go to the beach together, and I was grinding there without a wink of sleep. In the end, I sent her off to her mother's place, letting her figure things out on her own. By the way, the treatment took a toll on her hair, the very thing she had always prided herself on. She lost chunks of it, and the doctor warned that it might not grow back normally. She couldn't even hide it. The patches were too obvious. Since she worked as a hairdresser, her appearance became an issue. The salon asked her to leave gracefully to avoid scaring off clients, which was just one of those unfortunate side effects. Some might say there's a kind of justice in all this. And even though my ex-wife went through such a tough time, I couldn't muster a shred of sympathy for her.